Hi, Mary. Thank you for
Hello, hello, hello.
taking the time to talk with me today. I really appreciate it. You just mentioned a question you had for me, and I felt like it'd be good to answer it on this recording. So please ask me that question.
Yeah, start off with that. Well, the thing that I was curious about was what's your motivation for doing these calls? You mentioned this is the third one that you are doing. And so I have a lot of curiosity about that, the context of why we're having this conversation.
Yes. Um, I part of it is that one thing I want to say is like how does anyone explain what interests them? There's like some Calvin and Hobbes comic where I think Calvin says I must follow the inscrutable exhortations of my soul. And for whatever reason, gender, gender experiences, gender polarity is a persistent, recurring interest, curiosity of mine. I seek to understand. And when I feel into it, this is true for both men and women. However, being a man, I feel like I have much more access into the male psyche, men's experiences. Of course, there are male experiences I'm very much not used to, and some that I do experience that are, I think, atypical. But overall, I feel like I have like the gists, a lot of understanding, like, hey, what's it like to be a guy? I feel like I have a decent embodied experience of a lot of understanding there. Um, Whereas, hmm, as I interact with, observe, talk with women, just spend time with them in different containers and capacities. A lot of it just seems like fascinating, very foreign to me. Like I will never experience like the euphoria of like putting on makeup with girlfriends before going out, or like enjoying that getting ready together more than the event itself. And of course, there are obviously other things that are more embodied and inherent to like genetics and physiology that are, again, also things I'm not going to experience, not in this lifetime. Um, and so, yeah, there's this inscrutable exhortation that um, I have wanted to more intentionally explore. And I feel like one way of doing that is through one-on-one conversations where um, I get to hear directly. Like I may have stories or assumptions or guesses about women's experiences, but one woman I'm talking with, just a one-on-one conversation here, she might have something very different to say, or she might confirm my ideas or challenge them or, surprise me. There's just all sorts of different ways the conversations can unfold. And so, yeah, I just have a large appetite for gathering information just through these conversations, which I think helps give me a more holistic understanding of this curiosity I have about what it's like to be a woman. Yeah, there's an answer for you.
Yeah, I appreciate hearing that. I think I resonate with that a lot. Not so much in the gendered aspect, but like what is your experience like? How is it to be you? Whatever the you exists as because I am um it's not painfully aware, but I'm acutely aware to the degree that my perspective is just one perspective on the
Mhm.
world, and my experience is one that only exists within me, and I won't be able to experience something else somebody else has experienced, which is really cool.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. That's why one reason why I enjoy, regardless of gender, just conversations in general. I've really been enjoying just connecting with people through conversation has been so I've really been feeling into and been glad to explore just in person and online here. So I'm glad you've set aside this time to chat with me as well. I would like to state my intentions for this conversation. I feel like that's also been useful for me as a practice
Hmm.
um, as I'm exploring this sort of new iteration of this podcast. Yeah, let me feel into that. I really enjoy your attention on me. I appreciate it. Um, I intend to seek to understand who you are, Mary, as an individual through whatever ideas, experiences, things about yourself and your life that you want to share with me in this conversation. I intend to be present and trust my intuition and curiosity about however this conversation wants to unfold. I intend to listen and how to phrase this. Yeah, there are times where my mind wants to just like be elsewhere, be outside of the present moment. And I intend to release that proclivity and just really be with you and receive everything you want to share with me. Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to share as far as an intention for this conversation? If
Mm.
anything feels good there.
Yeah, I think part of the intention for me is being present and present with my own experience as well. Uh, and also to be, not that I necessarily expect it to happen, but to challenge you in any assumptions that you have. Because I think by
Yes.
default, I tend to be kind of like a, oh, sure, and like very welcoming. And maybe um defaulting to not, yeah, not challenging or not being able to assert my own experience, but I am an expert in being me and being a woman, and I'm very it's actually a big part of what I love about myself as well. So I feel like I want to talk more about it and share that
Mm,
in this specific context.
fantastic. Yeah, and for my part, I would love to be challenged. A highlight I think back to in a conversation just in person last year, someone told me that she felt like she could say anything about me, and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, totally." I was like, "Wait, you're right. You're not right, but yes, I'm hyper agreeable." And since then, I've been more aware of that. Now I'm just agreeable instead of just hyper agreeable.
Mm.
So
Hmm.
progress, and yeah, I'd love to, yeah, have any ideas in my head challenged by whatever you feel called to share. Okay. Um, I'm still workshopping this first question. Uh, it's basically a spin on, our guy Toshin says, "What is your life story?" And I want to ask, like, what is your womanhood story? And that could be short, long answer, broad, specific, illegible, legible, whatever feels good to share right there. I want to know, Mary, what is your womanhood story?
Hmm. In some ways, that's a funny question because I do feel like a woman, but womanhood, I'm like, oh, that's a strange word to describe this aspect of my journey that I've had. Like, what is this? What is my womanhood story? But when you ask that question, the first thing that comes to mind, the same as when Tasha asked me that question, and a lot of my life actually goes back to my family, and in this context, particularly to my mom. She is the most amazing woman that I have ever met in my entire life, and a woman who loves being a woman as well, and is like very powerful and very aware of her own capacity and uh, like her own sense of agency. And another piece of context in terms of my womanhood story is I have two sisters. I'm the oldest of three girls, and we're all very close in age. My younger sister is 1 year younger, and the other one is 2 years younger than her. So we're all very close in age, and we don't have any brothers. And so the only like male uh, presence in my life was my father. And we'd often joke around that he was like womanized entirely. He like sits on the toilet pee. Like He's a very like he does represent a lot of masculinity for me, but like the house was a woman's home. Um, we would have the like we would only have one bathroom that we would share, and at one point like in the bathroom was like my mom doing her makeup, one of us taking a shower, the other one like doing her hair, and another one peeing. It's just like it was just very much this experience of um uh yeah, like a sameness, I think, among my family. And we moved from Poland to Canada, so it felt like that was kind of the nuclear um experience that I had. And a lot of um I think there's I don't know, there's so many parts of being a woman and how I've grown up and what I experience myself to be um that feels like a part of it. One of it is that my mother has always really cared about um, how we like choose to present ourselves and dress, not in the sense of like purity, but about or like any kind of and anything in that direction, but rather like to be able to um like dress for the occasion. We would go to church every single Sunday and you would have to dress nicely for for church and would so I got a sense of like what does it mean to dress my body throughout my life and dress it in a way that actually is uh a, like attractive to me and is flattering to me as well, and that has felt really meaningful to be able to like express myself. And I don't think it's gendered in particular, but a lot of how I express my femininity often does come through appearance and with through clothes. And my mom was very insistent of like making sure that we put the effort in because it was like easy to we wore uniforms at in high school, but like we had civvies days and I would always dress up for the civvies days. I would like wear like little high-heeled shoes and I would like, click across the hallway and the boys would scatter thinking a teacher was coming their way. But other people wore sweats or kind of didn't have that kind of effort. And for me, part of the womanhood story is also like learning how to express myself um, in ways that are um, I don't know if gendered is the way to use it, but just like ways that felt good for me. Um, and what I felt was like flattering on me. And that also feels like a part of becoming a woman for me is knowing like what is my shape, both um like what is my shape in terms of what do I want, what do I care about. And my mother was also very wonderful about not um yeah, being purist or like I one time wanted to wear like a crop top and I was like, Mom, I don't know if I can wear crop tops are appropriate. She's like, when else are you gonna wear a crop top? Like you're young, wear a crop top now. Like you're never gonna it's only gonna get worse. Not only gonna get worse. We're like, wear it now. And that was a moment that really sticks out for me. I bet she doesn't remember, but it's like this experience of like, oh, that's really um something that she celebrated. Um she also um had talked a lot and she's very intuitive when it comes to like knowing the social dynamics and um has talked about like what is the um power that one can use in relationship with men. This is so interesting. I feel a little embarrassed about talking about it, but like I one of the lessons or kind of things that I've heard from her was if a man wants to do something for you, like let them do it
Hmm.
or ask them to do it. And you don't have to do it yourself, but let them do it because they'll be so happy to do it for you. They'll be
Hmm.
thrilled that they can help you and support you and do that. But you know you can do it yourself. Like you don't feel like you if you know how to do it, you have to do it yourself and just allow man or somebody else to do it for you. Like my father um puts the gas in the tank of our car like very regularly. Like he leaves in the evening, taking the car that my mom drives, fills it up, and then brings it back so my mom doesn't have to do it. And not in like and she could do it, but she just like this is like a service that he does for her. And so what I've learned from her is also the kind of um noticing the differences between men and women. I think that's also been an aspect of my womanhood journey has been knowing that there are differences, but those differences are not reasons to be um like they're not adversarial at all. Um, but ones to actually like have more opportunities for contact. In high school, I mostly had guy friends. Like I didn't have many girlfriends. Um, and I used to say I don't like girls. I think partially because I was bullied by a girl, a very popular girl, and her style of bullying was very girl coded, which was like we would sit next to one another, and at one point she would get upset and she would move her desk like 2 inches away from mine and just start ignoring me, and I would be like, what happened? Like, and it would be so painful for me to be ostracized that way. And she was popular. So also everyone else was also scared of her. We went on a trip, like all the boys threw the popsicle sticks at me too. It was a whole situation. Um, but I learned from that as well that there is no one that can, like, I didn't let anybody else after that have that kind of power over me because I wanted to be friends with her. And so I let her do that to me and I kept coming back to it. So that's also something that I've learned about like relationships with women is that they can be very complex. Um, she ended up actually leaving in the last year of elementary school and then coming back in the second year of high school. And it was a very different experience and relationship that I had with her. So I had guy friends. I had like very select girlfriends, best friends that actually weren't in the same school as me. So that was also really helpful to have relationships that like learn how to be in relationship with other people um, without having the need of a like seeing them every single day, knowing you're friends with your school friends because they are just so close.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And I think and a big transition then from like girlhood to womanhood was also when I had my first boyfriend. And this experience of falling in love, and I still felt like a little girl at that point, but I feel like that's one of the big shifts that happened. Um, Also with that relationship was also the like awakening of how much I love sex and how much I love uh, like at that time I'm exploring that more now, but like being in the submissive role, which is like usually gendered to be female as well. Um, or female coded, it could be. Um, and so it feels like that also has been a big path for me of exploring what am I like, who am I in relationships and what role do I play? Um, Yeah, there's much more that I can say. I feel like I'm rambling for a while about a variety of things. There's like so many women things I can talk about, like how they're related to work and the context
Mm-hmm.
that I've worked in and what that meant as a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, other relationships, so many different things. But what is a question that you have, sir?
Fine. Like I could listen to you ramble for another, hour and a half, and that'd be the episode. Great. Wrap it up.
Mary
Uh,
monologue.
yeah, sincerely. But yeah, I appreciate that initial sort of exploration there and uncovery and sharing with me of all those facets of your womanhood story. I appreciate that. Hmm. I'm very curious about so mostly male friends in high school and a few other more distant female friends. But also you had two sisters, very close in age. I'm very curious, like what was the dynamic as far as friendship or connection with your sisters? How did you get along? How did throughout your life, like both past and present, how do you relate to like sisterhood? That seems like a very unique,
Mm-hmm.
female dynamic one can have in life, the genetic sisterhood. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. That's so funny. I don't remember a time when I didn't have sisters. And I thought about that beforehand because some people like remember being kids and you're the only one. I was one in a couple months when my other sister came. And so it's always felt like um we were together. Again, I want to appreciate my mother in that she never made any of us feel like we stood out because of our order of birth. Like I was never in charge. I am in charge by default. I was the one that would always like do the things we want to help mom, but that's more because of my personality than because anything, and maybe because I was born first, but not because my mom or my parents kind of propagated that more. Um, but it was always that we take care of each other. Um, it was it was interesting in my family home in terms of the bonds between us because one of the like living configurations that we had is that we had uh, a really large bedroom, a medium-sized bedroom, and an office. So like a small bedroom. And then my parents were in the middle bedroom, and then we all three of us were in the largest bedroom when my grandparents were visiting and staying in the office. But then we would switch who was in that room every 6 months. So I would stay there for 6 months, and then Anya and Ola would live in the room together, and then we would switch again. So it meant that the two girls who were in the room together were closer because they got
Mm.
to spend that entire time together quite a bit. Um, I always found, and to this day, I find that my two other sisters are closer. I would probably say they're best friends, and probably they have more of the sisterhood bond than I feel with them. Um, but we spent a lot of time playing as well. We like had these whole like had plenty of dolls and had these very big stories of like what are these dolls experiences, and like we would dress them up. We dressed up GI Joe into like some clothes, and he had these like clamp hands and we had to fit his clamp hands through this tiny Ken jacket. um I still remember naming these dolls different things. Like there was a baby a doll that we named, and his name was Baby Box, and I still remember Baby Box. Like we still joke
Mm.
around about Baby Box with my sisters. So there's a lot of shared experiences, and one big actually shared experience with my sisters and my mom is that we share each other's closets. Like I don't need to go pack very much when I go home because I will wear. I have the same shoe size as my mom. I will pick something from her. My sisters are slightly different sizes, but like I can at least pick a sweater or something like that, and they will come in and get something from my closet, or I'll come back home and my things are in their closet. So there's a lot of like moving around of that. So it feels like when I come home, I have three closets. Eric's always upset because he's like, I really like this shirt. I'm like, not mine, it's Anya's. He's like, damn it. Damn it.
Hmm.
Um, and that's actually the same when I lived with my roommates in university, at least one of my really close friends. When we were going out, we'd often be like, what's in your closet? And then we would like switch clothes or borrow each other's clothes. There was one time in particular in one of my friends' birthdays where I wore all of her clothes and she wore all of mine. Like our outfits were of each other's clothes. Um, And when it comes to my experience of having sisters, I think it's also fluctuated over time. I feel different from my sisters. I feel like I'm weird. I don't do a lot of similar things, and striking out on my own. And even the degree that I did was strange. But um, I feel like we really care about one another. And most recently we went to Poland for a family trip. And on that trip, we all talked about how like it'll take work to be in relationship with one another because we are now as adults, like it's harder to know each other. They're my sisters. Um, but I don't only love my family, I really like them and I want to make sure that I have relationships with each of them. So I've actually been having more calls with each of my sisters, being that I'm farther away from them. And they're super cute. They made like a bucket list for the summer, and they like sent me a picture. And Anya was like, "Maybe we can do some of the things while you're here." I'm like, "Yes, let's make friendship bracelets."
Hmm.
So a lot of that, um, yeah, weaved in together. I bet they'd have different memories of me as a sister.
Hmm. I really appreciate hearing the fact that the two sisters in the large room
Hmm.
would have like a closer connection because there's a another universe where the two sisters in the same room they're more in conflict or fighting more just because of being in close quarters together. And I imagine that speaks to some quality in your parents, like just the household and their way of being that fostered that sense of cohesion between whichever two sisters were in the room. That's just my story there.
Oh, there was fighting. Oh, there was
Ah,
a lot of
oh,
fighting that happened.
yep.
But I think it's the closeness. It's part of like you're in the space with that person, and so you have to deal with them all the time. And the
Hmm. Hmm.
fights and like the playing together and the fights are actually all a part of being in a
Oh.
relationship with that person because
Hmm.
the one in the other room could just like disconnect from from that. Not that we were not that I don't think it was that stark, but um also I don't know if this is like a girls only thing. When you have sleepovers, you like when the lights go off, you talk with other people and um like that's often the case has been for me when I go to sleepovers is like the best conversations happen after the lights go off and like when you're in the room you can have those conversations or kind of go like play longer um and it was really meaningful because my youngest sister when it came to her moving into the room she was scared being there because it was the
Hmm.
first time she was going to be alone in a room.
Oh. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. I'd also like to know more about. I'm tickled by the fact that your mom was insisting on you wearing a crop top, whereas you like weren't like naturally wanting that, and usually the story is the opposite. Um, yeah, I'd love to know more about. You mentioned like an understanding of femininity through I forget the words, but your appearance or the way you dress. I just love to know more about how your wardrobe, clothing choices, and more broadly, your appearance informs, I guess, your sense of femininity or, yeah, I feel I'm struggling to articulate this question, but I just want to know more about how your sense of dress and your appearance informs womanhood and femininity for you.
Hmm. Being at the forefront when I first think about that question, it's a um, an idea of like what are the rules of what looks good together, and like what are the conventional I guess there's kind of conventional rules and like what is the um, different types of dress or like different types of clothing that are attractive on different body types. So it was also really helpful that mm, I have a different body type than my middle sister and then my older sister and my sorry youngest sister. So I feel like I also could get a sense of like what looks good on different people. And my mom was very forthcoming in teaching me that. Like for example, you can have different types of tops. They can have spaghetti straps, so they can be a boat neck, or they can be a like a halter top. And depending what your body type is, that actually influences how it looks visually. We watched a lot of oh my God. It's not Say Yes to Dress. It was like a TLC. It was like a
Mm.
TLC show about like what looks good on you. And be able to determine that and get a sense of like what is it that I look good in given the clothes that I have, but also given like how I want to look as well, which is important. Like you don't always have to look good. Um, there's also I like really didn't like my body when I was 13. I would cry. I don't know how my mom managed it, but I would cry so much, so often about how fat, ugly, and stupid I was. Um, I look back on that now being like, oh baby. Um, and like I was none of those things. I don't know exactly where it came from. Um, but one of the things that I really did not like about myself was how big my butt was and how big my legs were because the style at the time was also skinny jeans and
Mm.
like skinny jeans without stretch would not go past my knees. Like some women know the experience of like you put on your pants and you're like, fuck, this is not going any further, like past my knees. Like simply because just like my thighs and my ass are way too big for this. Um, and that's a that was also a recognition that like whatever the fashion is not necessarily what works for me. And the kind of identity shift away from like what is the fashionable thing to be wearing also propelled very much by high school where everyone wore the same things. It was like a TNA sweater, TNA pants, and Uggs. And like I don't own a pair of Uggs because they make me look like a gnome. Like because I'm so short. That's also a thing. Like when it comes to dress, you want to make sure that if you're shorter, you don't have horizontal lines because that will just make you shorter. Like there's a lot of wouldn't exactly call rules, but just like concepts, fashion concepts that create different visual effects. It's kind of like design. That's why I still love clothes to this day because of what you can create and what kind of visual appearances um, and what kind of personas you can take on. Depending what I put on today, um, I can put on a different appearance. One of my favorite, like a different persona on. One of my favorite moments of that was in high school. I was in a law class and I loved Mr. Burns so much. He was so great. He was this like Irish man. He was very stern, but like loved teaching. And the class was not an academic class. It was like a mixed class. So we had some folks who were just like an applied as well, so not as academically inclined. Um, and then we were doing a like fake court, uh, a proceeding. And I think I was one of the lawyers and I took that role on very seriously and I put on this like red blazer. I changed out of our uniform. I put in this like tight, fancy jumpsuit and like a red blazer and probably my clicky shoes because I was like, this is like I am going to embody this. And I walked into class, um, and like I did the court or whatever it was. And I remember Mr. Burns saying to me like keep doing that. Like you have intimidated them. Like you are making a point right now. And that felt really validating uh to to hear because I wasn't expecting it in the slightest. Is like that's how I wanted to present myself and embody it. And I learned how much presentation can make an impact. Um and yeah, it was like a short red blazer. It was like very much female coded fancy power aspect of it. So that was um it felt like a continued like validation of the kind of me that I want to be showing the world and how my clothes can change how I am interacted with and how much power and agency I have over that. Um, just keep rambling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a book that I read about a woman or a girl that was like the uglier sister, and then she underwent an accident, and then she got really pretty, and there was the entire book was about like the questions around pretty privilege and what does it mean to for someone to um interact with you because you're pretty now, and how the experience shifts. And the father of this girl said something interesting along the lines of like the prettiness is what attracts people, like what gets the attention, but it's what's inside that actually keeps them, which I think is true, which I think is very true, and it does put the value of the prettiness, the presentation, how important and valuable that is to be aware of how you want to present yourself, and that for me uh, feels like a big part of my womanhood journey. It is not the only one, but it feels deeply connected to my uh like power as a woman as well, and not that women who don't present feminine or who don't like have as much care, like put as much care into it, um don't.
Mm-hmm. I want to see if I understand part of what you seem to be getting at. Is it true for you that for you, the way you dress can present like a message or an intention to who you're interacting with, as far as like, this is how I want to be seen. This is how I want you to see me, or this is how I want to interface with you. Is that accurate?
mm, I think it's more accurate for me to say that how I dress represents who I feel myself to be in this. It's
Okay.
not so much how I want somebody else to interact with me, but
Mm-hmm.
um how I what is the story that I have of myself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying for me.
Yeah. I appreciate the question.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. It's really cool to hear as someone who is less intentional, usually about clothing choices. Yeah. You mentioned the story with the popular girl shifting away, and really um, stuck in my mind there was you mentioned like the complexity of, I forget, female connections or friendships maybe. I'd love to know your current understanding around that. I think the word was complexity around female women connections and how that comes up in your life today, if it does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, I feel so grateful about how much that has my relationships with other women have shifted since that time. I feel so blessed and grateful to have amazing women around me. Um, and part of the what's amazing about them is I really cherish the capacity in anybody, but especially in women, to be able to be direct with their own feelings, with something that they don't like, something that they do like, um, because I feel like I have been scarred or traumatized by that experience with the woman in elementary school or the girl in elementary school, where I felt like I had no idea what was going on and felt extremely unsafe about that. Um, After the kind of like that experience with the girl in high school and in elementary school, I became really close friends with another girl, Lindsay, and we're still friends to this day. It was her birthday yesterday. I sent her cinnamon buns
Hmm.
in Toronto, so it was a long way off. Um, but it was also at that time that I feel like I gave up on the dream of having a girl group of friends. Like I don't have a a gaggle of girlfriends. Um, I have individual relationships with many amazing women, and some of them know each other, but there has never been this experience of having like a close knit group of girlfriends, and that's something that I actually really miss, or I don't know the experience of having, of being able to, I know, get together and I like go to a winery or go to coffee or go to a class together or um, even the something I haven't known how to bridge was like close female physical contact, just like platonic contact. Um, I'm not like very physically intimate with my sisters, like hugs, but otherwise that's kind of like distant. There are some friends that are just like they're more physically intimate. Um and I really appreciate that, but I don't have the kind of closeness that I wish I had or I've seen other friends of mine have.
Hmm. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Hmm. I'm wondering, when you imagine the desire for or curiosity about some gaggle of a female friendship group, um, are the things you imagine that would add to your life or contribute to it, or what would it give you that you may not have right now? You can hypothetically imagine this.
Yeah. Um in particular, right now, I live in Vancouver and I don't have a lot of friends here in the first place. Like I don't have people that I'm close to. I moved here about 2 years ago. And I think it would provide um like a maybe a space to relax. Actually,
Hmm.
more than that, like a thing to do. I want to be like doing things with friends and share those experiences with others. Um, I imagine. So when you asked me that question, I was like, oh, I don't know if I actually want a gaggle of friends, of girlfriends, because that feels like it would be also um, challenging for me because I don't do very well in groups very often. Like social groups, I tend to fade in the background. I by default have a lot feel closer in one-on-one connection. But if I felt close to like had an individual connection with each of the women, and I could imagine just like being like three other women, so it's just like four of us um, in connection together. Um, I think it would also add. Um, I would like to have women in my life that I can share my like what's going on in my life that I can't share with Eric in the same way. Um, Even about my body and like IUD and just like experiences of being female entrepreneur, like what does all of that feel like and have that be more present in my life than it is right now? Because I can have one-off conversations with people like that um, with other women, but um, it's not as present.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned feeling unsafe with the experience in elementary school, and I'm wondering, how does safety come up in your life today? If it does, were there experiences past elementary school where safety was a big salient part of it. I'm laughing at my inability to try and formulate questions where I wanted like hear Mary talk about safety. Just that's the prompt. When I say like a smart sounding question, but just like Mary safety anything.
Question mark? Is it in particular in relationship with
Hmm.
women? Is it in relationship like is it in general as a woman?
I would say,
Uh,
yeah, for you as a woman is my
mhm,
curiosity there. Yeah.
yeah. Um, I feel like safety isn't the right word to describe the experience that I had with that girl in elementary school. I'm
Hmm.
trying really hard not to say her name. Um,
Yeah.
um, I think more it was like grief and disconnect and a lot of confusion around
Hmm.
what was happening and just like really not understanding about what I did wrong because it was always like what did I do such that this happened. I know now that it was probably her like problems at school and she was just taking it out on me. Totally fine. It wasn't fine, but like adult me feels a lot of love for both of us.
Hmm.
Um, when it comes to safety, for me, there has been experiences of feeling like unsafe as a woman in some physical spaces. Oftentimes when it's dark or like walking down, like this is the quintessential, I feel like woman experience of like walking down the street. I'm like very much aware about of how like who's walking around me. I don't listen to music when I walk around, when I travel when it's darker. Um, I like yeah, make sure to be aware. I always know like I can always pretend to call someone. I like people know where I am most of the time. Like it's there is awareness of what it means to be safe physically. Um, and one of my biggest fears is like getting kidnapped, like in the middle of the night. Less so now. Um, but that feels like a fear of my of a fear for my safety. And oftentimes the assailant is like a man, even though faceless or otherwise. But um, on the other hand, I have never felt or have I have I don't remember any times that I felt unsafe when I have been around men. Um, in particular, I'm thinking about the company that I worked at in downtown Toronto. I was like on a team with all men, most of them older and more experienced. And it like didn't register that that was necessarily the case. And I definitely held my own throughout the entire process. There was also an experience that I had with the director at the time who also hired me. And he was making some kind of jokes about me not getting hired back because I was on a contract or something. And I got really upset and kind of left and when and cooled off when I came back, I told him that he's not allowed to make these jokes with me anymore. Um, and felt like I stood up for myself in ways that I saw other women um not um not be able to do that for themselves. Interestingly, the man that hired me got fired for sexual harassment um after I left the company. But I never experienced anything from him in that direction. I think because I was able to um uh like express that I don't tolerate something like this and it is not okay, set out boundaries. Um so I think those are times that I could have felt unsafe, but I didn't. Um there was one time there was one time that I felt unsafe in particular with a man. And I don't know, I still can't make sense of this experience, but we were at church and the the person who was playing a the organs, who's like an older gentleman, and I don't maybe it was my birthday or it was some kind of something was happening, and he knew my father, and he said hi to him, and I think he like touched my knee in a weird way, and to this day I like don't know whether I was just like very sensitive as a young girl or whether there was anything like creepy or leery about him, but I remember just like feeling so uncomfortable at the time and just like so gross about this touch and like so uh yeah, uncomfortable about it. Um and feel like I wasn't protected by my dad at that point. As well. I was probably just like 14 or 15 or something. Um and that's when I felt um like I remember feeling unsafe, particularly with uh, a man. I've always been able to like handle guys my my age, and then at work, but it was like that kind of vulnerable state. Yeah, I think
Hmm.
those are. I generally feel safe, and I feel safe in my body and with other people. I'm also a person who doesn't take a lot of risks, so that can also be a like
Hmm.
physical risks, at least.
Hmm. Hmm. So you wouldn't be in unsafe situations. Um,
Yeah, unless I'm with friends that are making the situations fun but also slightly unsafe. Yeah.
hmm. Hmm. Cool. Yeah, I really admire just you. It sounded like pretty effortlessly were able to express that workplace boundary. And I wonder, where does that come from? Like, is that like you mentioned also being able to handle people your age, like male friends your age, effortlessly too. So I'm wondering, like, did you have to like grow into just expressing a boundary effortlessly, or was it always like an innate quality you have? Yeah.
I think that actually goes back to the experience with the elementary uh
Hmm.
school girl where
Yeah.
um I told myself at that time that I will never let anybody else treat me like that. And treat me
Hmm.
like I don't like I'm less like I did something wrong. Um Especially when I know that this is not okay. Um,
Hmm.
I think it's something that I then uh, grew up kind of practicing more. It was really helpful. I don't know how relevant this would be, but it feels relevant. Of I in high school I didn't date anybody, um, and there were several boys that asked me out or like expressed their interest to me, and I was like very clear about the no to them. Um, Maybe because I had a list of like what who I would want to be dating. Yeah, Lindsay. Oh, Lindsay and I had or like have a notebook. It was like her and I's notebook where we wrote out like who are the cute boys, and like both real and not real. What are the like what are our goals for the semester? What are our honestly, like what is the yeah, who like who's the perfect guy? Like what are the lists that we have? What's our bucket list? And somewhere in there is also drawn like how we want our engagement ring to look like and just like all of those little um things written out in there. And there was a list, but it more was this feeling of like I know what I want and what I don't want, and I want don't want to be um at least dating these boys that were asking me out. Um in It was also I think a lot of the kind of capacity to set a boundary did come from several times where I was very clear about what I don't want. Another time was when my boyfriend who I was dating in university and I broke up after 3.5 years of being together. And we didn't break up because we didn't love each other, but because we um like saw different paths for each other and like I think felt differently about we still love each other, but felt differently about what kind of life path we wanted to go down. And it was one of the hardest things that I ever did, but it was also really important. Like I cried for 10 days after we broke up, and after the 10th day, like the sun broke through, and I was like, this was a good thing to have done.
Hmm. Wow.
Um, and I have this mantra that I have of like do the scary thing, like especially if it
Hmm.
scares you. Like when you feel the kind of fear of making a move, and it's a specific kind of fear, then it's like that's when it's your turn. Like if there's a circle of conversation and I feel my heart pounding, I'm like, okay, it's me. I'm next rather than shrinking away from it. And I think it's similar in those moments of like this is important enough to say. Um,
Hmm.
and also the consequence of it. Like if I didn't tell that director dude that this is not okay, then it would just happen again. And I'm like, I'm not gonna let it happen again.
Right. Ah, cool. Yeah. Hmm. With the boyfriend in university, I think at the start you mentioned like when I was saying love of sex through that relationship. And I want to know more broadly how that relationship informed your sense of womanhood or things you learned about yourself as a woman through just that unique connection with your first boyfriend there.
There's so much. I feel like it that relationship changed the trajectory of uh my life. I probably wouldn't be talking to you right now if it wasn't for that. Um the place to start is I talked to you about that list that I made. Um Ben hit most of them or hit quite a bit uh of them. And the the love story is so cheesy for me, but like I saw him and it felt like I don't know, like I was overwhelmed. I like semi-stalked him for 6 months. We like had a similar classroom, like we were in the same program, and I would walk past the classroom. Um, like I made it a detour. Like I would default to detour there to just like peek into the classroom to see if he was hanging out there. I had no idea who he was. I had no idea about his name. I like nothing. He was just like very mysterious person. He was also in 3 years above me or 2 years above me in university. So I was like fresh faced baby in knowledge integration, like first year baby, still wearing my like little fancy outfits to university. Um, and I remember one time he was like exiting a classroom and I was in there and like time stopped. Like I had this moment of like time stopping and everything went quiet. And I was in a room of like 20 people. I just like made eye contact with him. And he was like, as he walked out, I was like, whoa, what just happened? So it felt like that relationship um made a lot of the movie stuff make sense
Hmm.
a lot more. Um, it was also he was a fantastic first boyfriend. So before him, I had like no interest in sex. Just like no idea, no interest about self pleasure, about anything. It was just like not
Hmm.
on my radar. And he was very sweet, and we actually didn't have sex for like 6 to 8 months or so. He was just like very slow and caring and like very at my own pace. So when we did end up doing that and being intimate, it was like I felt extremely safe and cared for and also adored. I have had such like fantastic experiences with the men that I've had sex with, just like adoring me and my body, and like I've never felt insecure in my sexual encounters with other people because partially because of Ben and how much he just like was so enamored and like expressive of my body, which then had me see me as a woman through somebody else's eyes in a way that I have never experienced myself. Um, I was like aware of my body when it came to the dressing and other things, but like what can my body be as a like something that's attractive, desired, um, worshipped. Like I feel very connected to the idea of being worshipped and adored. So that felt really meaningful. And I'm still extremely grateful for that for him because I have no insecurities when it comes to um, my body or like physical intimacy or like how good I am at kissing or like how good I am at physical like it's just I'm amazing at it and like even if I'm not it's like the confidence and the kind of interaction feels really um um yeah, it's like you are, you aren't, whatever you believe.
Mm.
Um, Another aspect of what I learned about myself through that relationship was also like I thought I was going to marry him. So it was also this kind of like, who am I in this relationship? And like how I'm seeing our future together. And that was essentially the reason why we broke up is because that's not the kind of future he wanted for himself, the kind of relationship he wanted. Um, we related to relationships differently, which was also really meaningful because one of the things that I also learned about myself was that I like zeroed in on the relationship with him, and he was one of the only support systems for me. I like ended up um, not I still had friends. There were one of my closest friends didn't approve of him, including my sister. So there was a lot of division uh, there, and my heart being pulled in different places. And um, yeah, we then at the second half of my fourth year, we decided that we needed to break up or kind of change the relationship that we had. And that was one of the last things, most important things that that relationship taught me. A couple of months before we broke up, I was living in Disney World with some of my friends there, and one of the things that my friend who I was staying with said that like you don't actually understand the experience of a breakup until you go through it. Like sure, you can hear about it, but like unless you have gone through that, you don't understand really feel had this embodied sense. We were just talking about the perspective, like at the beginning of the call. You like, sure, you can try to understand, but you'll never be in their body. And
Mm.
I was like, oh no, I know what a breakup is. Like, oh. And then I went through a breakup. I was like, oh my God, I understand what a breakup is now. Um, and like the heartache and the pain and everything that comes with it. Um, yeah, and it felt like a big part also of me growing up and whether becoming more of a full person and also as that yeah, a woman as well, a woman in relationship and um yeah, feels like a big part of it.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you for all that elaboration. I notice myself just like thanking you for every answer because yeah, I am grateful. I'm gonna say it.
Yes.
Yeah. And I would like to know more. I think the last major thread you gave in your initial answer um was around and exploring submission in sex more recently. And I think for me, for that, for my own, I don't know, feeling of like safety in this conversation, I was surprised you hadn't mentioned anything around dance and I think maybe specifically being a follow in dance, which I know aren't necessarily directly related. However,
Yep.
I would love to know about um, hmm, what's your experience like of I assume you're exclusively a follow in dance when you do dance, is that correct?
Nope. I started
Oh, wow.
learning how to lead. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just love to know like yeah, how does like that experience of dancing, I guess both newly leading and following, how does that feel in your body? How do you like what do you enjoy about it? Yeah, so I want to know like dance, Mary, go.
Yes. 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 Especially
Yeah.
now leading and following.
Yeah.
Um,
hmm
oh, I love the questions. I love the questions. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about dance. Duh.
Hello. Yeah.
Hello, and all of the whole thing around yeah, experience of dancing. Also, the better you are as a dancer, the better you're at sex. It has been a conversation in the community as well.
mm,
Not an outward, not like a public one, but I have heard that mentioned a bunch
hmm
as well. Which yeah, I think dance is really a really amazing metaphor for so many parts of life. The more I have been actively learning West Coast swing as a partner dance and um the dynamic of a leader and a follower, um this, like the more the world and my own experiences of myself make sense.
hmm
So um I started learning West Coast swing as a follower. Um The lovely thing about around West Coast Swing is that the rules are not gendered. You can be a follower or a leader, and we actually have competitions that are like switchlies. So like you can switch between who's a leader and follower. Mid dance, you can also have like doppelganger um, competitions where you like danced with someone who looks like you, which is like assuming it's same gendered as you. It's pretty cool. Um, when I first started learning following, it was actually a really challenging experience for me. Um, like learning and not being good at something. Um, that's generally a challenge for me that I want to be already really good. And I sometimes have had a hard time um, receiving feedback or like receiving not very structured feedback. And the way that Eric taught me and the way that he likes to learn is more about like make a mistake first and then learn from it. But I would make the mistake and then would just fall into a total like upsetness about not doing it right. Uh, I have since worked on that a lot more, and the big thing with following is like becoming more attuned to what the leader is like indicating for you. So it's a lot more kind of like not necessarily guesswork, but just like presence with the other person. There's a lot more. There's expression that you can have there, especially when you start dancing as a new follower. Um, it has been a fascinating experience to then starting the learning how to lead. And I'm loving it. Like it's so much fun. I've also noticed how different my experience of learning it is. I feel like I have a lot more questions. I have a lot more direct, um, okay, how do I do this? What are like I have a lot more questions, I think because I feel like I have a lot more control over what is happening. Um, it's also terrifying. Like it's more scary than learning how to follow because I am in charge of the other person. Oftentimes the other person is Eric and the man is first he's a 6'2" man and he is um when he when he's following especially when we're learning together he's being a very stubborn follower so he will only do the things that I will direct him to do so that I get really good feedback around what I'm doing
hmm
but it means just like okay, I have to like stop this large person coming at me, and I'm 5'4", so significant difference. Um, but it has been um both terrifying whenever someone, it's mostly like the leaders who also follow that ask me to lead them. I'm like, please don't, please don't. And we just like go through the dance together. I mostly just laugh the entire time. But it has been a really valuable experience to learn how to lead when following, to know how it feels, to know what is the opposite person's experience of what you are doing. And when I've spoken to Eric about kind of the like the ideas of West Coast swing and the concepts of it, it if you are ever to learn it, I think it's really valuable to learn both roles or to learn the basics in the other role to be able to understand how it feels like on the other side when you do a certain move or do it in a certain way. What is the impact of that? It's it's also important in West Coast swing that there's always a leader and a follower because
Hmm.
otherwise you don't have the dance.
Yeah.
And that's something that Eric and I have talked about in terms of uh like our physical interactions, like our sex as well as like it's really good. One of the things that we talked about is really good when someone's in charge. Like someone has to be in charge, even when someone who's in charge says, "Now you're in charge," and
Hmm.
be able to like have the kind of clarity. I don't think it's not always, but then it creates, I think, a safety for the other person to then uh relax. This also feels connected to, I don't know if you've read or heard of Unbound
I haven't.
by
No.
Kasia Obaniak.
No.
So it's Unbound and it's A Woman's Guide to Power. It's a book that a lot of my female friends are recently reading. And the main idea of it is the relationship to submission and domination. And submission, they're actually both related to attention. So submission is attention in and like knowing what your experience is, and
Hmm.
domination is attention out when you're like really paying attention to the other person and being able to direct it. And confusion often happens when or like clunkiness or stuckness happens when the two of them get confused, when someone's trying to be dominant but they're actually their attention's actually inwards and noticing what
Hmm.
their experience is, um, instead of like being attuned to the other person's experience. And mission, um, and like often can get confused when someone um, is like attempting to express their need, but they're actually have their attention out rather than attention in.
Wow. Yeah, there can be like failure modes both ways when the role is not being embodied as it ought to be. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really appreciate and understand what you were saying about the dance being a broad metaphor, like how it applied there to roles and sex. And then I was also thinking like in coaching calls, which we both do, like one person really holds space for the other person.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
if I'm busy thinking about like, oh, how does this relate to my life? I'm totally failing my role as the space holder. And like my attention's outward towards the other person, like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
wow, cool. That I really have to remember Unbound, that book title. Um, hmm. Yeah, I wonder if there's anything beyond what you had already mentioned there around submission. If there's anything you've learned about yourself through, um, I think you'd say like there's a recent interest and exploration in a submissive role in sex.
Mm. No, it's actually the opposite. I've always been submissive. Like I've
Okay,
defaulted to being submissive,
right,
and really enjoy it. Um, I have been trying to play around more with more of like it's not dominance for me, it's leading.
sure.
Like that's I guess how I would think about it. Um, in part because the experience of like intimate connection with someone oftentimes is actually a spiritual experience for me,
Mm.
or it has been in the past. Um, I hold myself very tightly for several reasons, like how I present to other people, like who I am as a person. I'm an Enneagram 1, so perfectionist. And it's like very, a lot of the time, my attention is actually very outwardly focused. Um, it's in coaching, focus on other people. I'm like a one wing two, which is like a helper. So I feel like a lot of my attention is like, how can I help somebody? How can I make this easier for someone? And oftentimes I get lost. I lose sight of what I need to do for myself. That's why one of my goals for this year is Mary Care, like have a nice and
Oh.
centered Mary Care there. Um, and then when it comes to the experiences of connection in sex, it feels like that's the time where I can actually go inwards into the experience that I am having, especially when I feel safe enough to do that with somebody. Um, I think that was a really big thing for me. Um, when I was also in high school, and then later on, like when it came to who do I want to be to be dating, it's like I needed to feel safe with them and like feel this connection. And to this day, I like love a lot of people. I flirt with everyone. I say I flirt with rocks. I just like have this outward connection that I have with people. But there are few that I feel like I can share my full self with, both like physically and even emotionally. So the submission is more of like the release and kind of the ability to not be caring for somebody else in that space and allow myself to be cared for. Um, I think that's a challenge um, some women experience, especially recently, of just like needing to do so many things themselves that there's like, I don't want to be needy. I don't want to feel like I have needs, or I don't want to express them, maybe because I don't want
Mm.
to have them be met. And that's still something that is in my experience, but dating Eric has changed a lot of that. He's
Mm.
been like, tell me more of your needs. I was like, we haven't been close. He's like, tell me more.
Ah.
Tell me more. I'm like, I'm needy. He's like, yes, you're needy. I love hearing about your needs.
Oh.
So he's been like really open about that and encouraging of it. Um, and I think the curiosity towards leading or more like dominance, even in sexual interactions, is one of um, like wanting to know how it feels, but also because it's like really tough. I really get in my head. And I think I definitely like get confused between like the attention in, attention out, and like, am I
Mhm.
doing it right? How does the other person feel? Um, it also didn't help that in my like the relationship that I had, my first boyfriend, he like did not like um being in the submissive, like not even in a role where attention was on him, so there was not a lot of feedback that I would get back, so I would just get like very confused about like what was the thing that felt good, what was like what to do. And I'm very sensitive towards that, so it part of also like leading in like physical intimate spaces is being okay with it being playful or being like weird and like this didn't work, let's try a different thing. So it's more of an exploration that way.
Mhm. 1 second. Okay. Hmm. Yeah, thanks for that elaborate answer. Um, hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I want to move on to, you mentioned like a work context, or there could be a whole world talking about you as a woman entrepreneur. And is there anything like really salient or alive in the idea of like how, something you want to share about just being a woman working, an entrepreneur, a coach?
Hmm.
Hmm.
I think the most salient context that has felt alive for me when it was the like difference of being a woman versus a man was present for me at the downtown office in Toronto that I worked. It was a financial consulting company, so it was quite male dominated uh, as well, and like very left brain and like corporate ladder climbing as well. And even the woman in the partner role, um, she looked badass. She was just like she looked very hot, and was just like powerful. She looked very powerful, but I think her demeanor was very much like a male oriented one to fit in with the intensity of what I was going on there, and in that work context, one, I was really clear about the boundaries, such as I was with that director, but I also was very clear about what I wanted and was like expressing what I wanted to the degree that the our like head of the department when we had our team meeting was like, if you want anything done, just go to Mary. It seems like she just gets stuff that she wants. And it was a matter oftentimes of just asking. An example of that was I was in the design part of the company, and the associates, the one that came in for the business side, when they first joined, would go to New York for a training for 2 weeks, and nobody from the design department ever went that joined. And my friend Jimmy told me about it, and I was like, I want to go. I think we should go. And so I went to the head and like made a case of like, I think as like the design people, we need to collaborate with the people in business. It'll actually make things better for us. And I think it'll be a well worth it investment. And also like, we are a part of this company. And I ended up going for free for the entire thing. They paid for the entire trip. And I was like very like, oh, I'm here. And this is the kind of different perspective that I bring. Uh, then I wanted to go to like a conference, and it was a matter of just asking and making the case for it. And that felt very, um, and it felt like I did it in a way that wasn't like contradicting or hard or like demanding, but rather, um, uh, like how can I work with the other person? Like how can I have them see my perspective? And it felt like very much like what I learned from my mom about like, well, how do not only about male female dynamics, but just like how can I collaborate with this person, or how can I see their perspective to be able to get the thing that we want, or have get the thing that I want, and like see have them come around to that. That felt really like present for me, and that job wasn't what I wanted to be doing. I ended up like burning out and not wanting to do that. But I saw my two close female friends run a business, Occupied Mind, still running. Very cool. And I ended up being jealous of them. I like realized that I'm so jealous of the time that they have of what they're doing. And so I ended up quitting my job and then traveling and then figuring out that I want to be a coach or giving it a try. That's another thing. Just like giving it a try, seeing how it
Hmm.
goes. Um, this feels like just a part of my experience, but I feel lucky again to have my parents as my parents because they're both entrepreneurs. So when I quit my job and then decided to open my own business, they were over the moon. One of my fears was that they were going to be like, you quit your job, you don't know what you're doing. But they were like, we're so proud of you. I got my first client. They were like, shots for everyone. My mom is still like the number one person that I go to for any entrepreneurial advice because when we moved to Canada, she started her own business, running a flower design business. She's been running that her entire time. Um, and has not opened a flower shop and just runs it out of her garage because she wants the autonomy. So I also learned from her and from both of my parents what it means to build a life that you actually want and not a life that um, goes by any kind of conventions that exist. It's in being an entrepreneur and running our own business, running my own business, I feel like I still haven't found like that I have been, I don't know, like less successful than my male counterparts or I don't have a lot of like awareness around um I don't know, like gender success around that. Um I have a lot of questions in terms of running my own business of how my life will go from here because I want to have kids in the somewhat near future. Uh, like, how will that impact the work that I do? Will I just not have any coaching clients at the time? Do I need to create some kind of um, uh, like passive income stream? Will I be depending on Eric at that time? Like, how are we going to do that together? So even though and there's no like maternity leave that I will have from my own job unless I like design that for myself and I put away that amount such that that will be like paid back for me or like saved that way for myself. But I think that's something that has been on my mind. I don't have a lot of answers for that. My mom stayed at home and my dad went to work, so that's I know she wasn't happy about it. And she had me when she was 25 and she said that was too young to have kids.
Mm.
She said that to wait. She was still growing up at that time. And like neither me nor my sisters have ever felt any pressure from my parents to get married, even to like move out of the house. It's they really like us. So you can definitely feel it. And we like them as well.
Mhm. Hmm. What are some things in particular you look forward to about being a mother?
Oh, so many things.
Right.
One, which is so funny to me, but I'm like very curious how my body is going to change and like how it's going to be. And again, the best thing is like I plan to have kids with Eric. Hope that happens. But like he's really excited about me being pregnant. He's like, I'm so excited about how your body's gonna be and like the experience of it, how it's going to be different. And so it feels very like supportive and thrilling that like my partner will be just like so um attracted to me still because I think one of the fears that I don't have this fear. I might have this fear when I actually experience my body changing, but like that your body's different. Like you no longer experience the same like your body changes very quite a bit. I've been lucky, not lucky, to experience my aunt through her pregnancies. The thing with my aunt is that she has a very bad case of like morning sickness for 9 months. And she like can't drink water, can't eat food. She like is sick for 9 months when she's pregnant. So I'm not looking forward to that experience of pregnancy. Probably won't happen. My mom was fine. So yeah, being pregnant will be such an interesting experience of having my body change. You asked me what I'm looking forward to, but I will tell you what I'm also not looking forward to. Um, Something I'm not looking forward to is the hormonal experience because I am very sensitive to hormones, like to changes in my system. I'm also very, very emotional. So it's going to be a wild ride for me and my partner and a lot of mindfulness, a lot of conversations and self-awareness will need to go through that process. But I'm like preparing myself for being a very big emotional journey more than maybe I've experienced to date. Um, what I'm excited about being a mom. I'm excited to like learn about this little person. Um, I'm fine with them being babies. I'm probably gonna scare it. I'm gonna like break this thing. Like Eric's not into babies like until two, until like they like have some curiosity around the world. Um, I think they're fine. I bet they'll be cute. Um, I also lived for a very like said for a very long time that I would not have kids. Um, probably till I was about 25 or so. Um, And I don't know where it entirely came from. I think it's because I don't like children. I don't understand them very well. Um, or I like felt like I didn't understand them. Um, but I think a lot of kids' experiences are like shaped by the context that they are in as well. I've been very like aware of other people's dynamics of being parents and their relationships to themselves and then to kids. Eric and I have like an Instagram folder and we just like put our like parenting videos about how to parent kids in there. A big thing that has changed, I think, my perspective on kids is meeting a person that I can imagine having kids with. Um,
Hmm.
I have not had this feeling of like, oh, I want to have kids randomly. I like do not have baby fever. When my youngest cousin was born like 3 years ago, I like held her so rarely when I did. My aunt was like, wow, you're holding her. And I'm like, I'm, it's fine. It's fine. I just don't need to hold her as much versus my sister was like, "Oh my God, she's the cutest thing ever," and was just like cuddling her all the time. I'm like,
Mhm.
It's fine. It's a baby." Um, I am also very excited to be doing this with Eric. To like get curious about our kids are doing, to like wonder about them as people, and like work through the challenges that are there.
Hmm.
Um, I also read this book called The Female Brain, which a while ago, which describes the different chemical soups that a female brain is in throughout her life,
Hmm.
and like how that impacts one's experience. And like when you're a mother, like your chemical makeup changes drastically. And there's a different orientation to the world and to reality, and you have this person that you care about. Um, and I can't imagine how it is to feel love, like a mother's love towards another being. And I feel curious about that. I feel ambivalent on though looking forward to or not. There's a lot of curiosities of the female like mother experience that um that I have. Uh and I think there's also a fear that I have of like what if I can't have kids? Like what will that then mean for for me?
Hmm. Yeah, a lot there to wonder about, excited, scared of,
Yeah.
curious, all of
Will you
that.
do a second call when if I'm a mom to be like, how has this changed?
No, I need like the pregnancy sensitive Mary call there.
Pregnancy
You
diaries.
just like yell at me for 2 hours. Great.
Oh, I'm more likely to just cry. I
Oh,
like cry by default. I'll just cry
yeah.
to you about everything.
Oh, also very welcome. I'm going to read through a list of questions and see if any feel alive to ask right now.
Sure.
Hmm. Do you have any suggestions or advice for any men listening on how they can help women feel safe?
I think a lot of it for me comes down to in its simplicity listening. And um, there is nuance to it, but welcoming and like validating the experience of of um, the other person of a woman. Um, what I'm basing this on is my experiences with Eric and how safe and um, heard I feel with him, and a lot of that has to do with um, him listening and um, like not making a lot of assumptions, and if there are assumptions, to ask questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's I really appreciate like women's spaces and men's spaces. Um, but I think there is a lot of value in having nuanced conversations together and more spaces of of conversations like this, of feeling safe with another person, being able to ask questions that might be weird or might reveal a certain like story that I have that might be strange than to say to a random person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and build that kind of um, trust and connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. As I have more of these more focused conversations, is there any question you would enjoy hearing other women answer?
Mm. It's a question that I have asked other women, and it's, do you like being a woman?
Hmm. And I imagine that question leads to all kinds of different responses. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It has for me, and I feel curious about like how women relate to themselves as women, or what's even a question before that or a follow-up is like what does being a woman mean to you?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that also feels like it might be a good version of my first question. Yeah, what does being a woman mean to you? Hmm. Yeah, it's so beautiful that like it's going to be such a unique conversation or answer every time to that kind of question.
Mm-hmm.
Writing it down. Okay. Thank you for that. Is there anything else you want to talk about, say, or share that you hadn't gone to discuss with me here today?
I think answering last question is like I really love being a woman.
Ah.
I love being a woman. Um, and I've asked several women that question, and what they've answered me is that they don't.
Hmm.
Um, I think a lot of them comes from different contexts. One of them was a friend of mine that's Brazilian. She doesn't feel safe walking around in her hometown without being um, whistled at or um, seen as like something desirous, but not more than that. I think another friend of mine, she doesn't really like being a woman, and would like prefer to be a person, like be like agnostic of gender.
Mhm.
Um, and though I deeply understand each of their perspectives and can like really resonate with them, there is like a uh, I have a real appreciation for being a woman because of my upbringing. So that has felt upbringing and like experiences, and I know that's not every woman's experience. I feel like grateful and um, pretty privileged as well to have had experiences that have not feel like stained what it means to be a woman to me. And I bet there's significantly more than what I've even talked about in this conversation. Um, yeah, has its challenges, but it's a net positive for me.
Ah, hmm, hmm. Yeah, and I think that really came through throughout our conversation. Yeah, I imagine there's a lot to attribute or be grateful to your parents for, both genetically, whatever helps you just assert things in different contexts and go after what you want, and also like the support throughout your life. It seems like they provided you in the healthy family structure. I'm really set you up for just a life where you can really enjoy being a woman and like it.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was shaped by the people, like all my boyfriends and like the friends that I've had, my parents. Um, yeah, it's been, I've got a lot to be grateful for.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, I again really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me, Mary. I feel really grateful for you receiving curiosities here for close to 2 hours straight here. And um, yeah, I feel really happy that I have this space where I can just it's a ask and listen and receive and understand you better. And yeah, so I appreciate your part in shaping that conversation with me today.
You're very welcome. It was a delight. Thank you for your curiosity.
Mhm. All right. Well, have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks. You too.